Okay, good morning everyone. I think for the very first time we're recording live. I'm not going to say exactly where, but we're on the border of Germany and Switzerland. Okay, we'll leave it at that. But security doesn't allow us to pinpoint it any more than that. Okay, we're continuing in Mishna Daf HaShavua, Hilchos Kriyas Sefer Torah, Siman Kuf Lamed Hey, Siv Vav. Im nichnas hakohen lebeis haknesses achar shehizchal haYisroel levarich berachas haTorah. The Kohein walks into the shul after the Yisroel already began to make the bracha. Einoi poisek. The Yisroel doesn't stop. Avo Baruch Hu alone lo have a haschala is not a haschala. Baruch Hu alone is not a haschala. V'oimed haYisroel bateva. The Yisroel then stands. In other words, let's say the Yisroel just said Baruch Hu, and then the Kohen walks in. So the Yisroel is going to stand at the Amud ad sheyashlimu Kohein v'Levi, until the Kohen gets his Aliya and the Levi gets his Aliya. Va'az yikra, and then he reads. Then, in other words, then he gets the third Aliya. Im ein Kohen b'beis haknesses. If there's no Kohen in the shul, koirei Yisrael b'mkoim Kohen. The Yisrael gets Aliya in the place of the Kohen. V'lo yala achrav Levi. You're not mechabed a Levi after the Yisrael. Okay. Haga avo Rishon yuchal lalois. Rishon he could go, meaning a Levi could get Rishon. A Levi could get Rishon. He doesn't have to get Rishon. You don't always have to give Rishon to the Levi when there's no Kohen, but you could. When you call up a Yisroel or a Levi, you call him up b'mkoim Kohen. Why? So you don't mistakenly think that this guy got upgraded to a Kohen, because there are a lot of people there these days, especially they applied to be a Kohen. So we don't want anyone to think that his application was accepted. Okay, Sif Katan Yotes Achar Shehischal. Once the Yisroel starts, Hainu Sha'amar Baruch Ata Hashem. If he said Baruch Ata Hashem, so you say, why? Let him say Lamdeni Chukecha. No, that's not. Once he said Hashem's name, then that's a haschala and he'll get the Aliya. Einoi Poisek Kedei Shaloi Tia Bracha Levatala, so that it's not a Bracha Levatala. So the Dirshu brings, he could end off Lamdeni Chukecha. The Magen Avram says, it's Efshir L'Sakein. What does he have to say Lamdeni Chukecha? Let him say the whole bracha. That's much better. Okay. V'oid D'loi nechshav pagam lahakoyin. The fact that the Yisroel takes Aliya is not a pagam for the Kohen. The Yislu, because they will hinge it. Shelo hayasham b'shas shekar la Yisrael. They'll just say the Kohen wasn't there when they called the Yisrael. Or maybe it was a mistake. They'll think the Kohen wasn't there. It's mistaber, let's say it's Shabbos. The Yisrael will count toward the 7, and you don't have to call up another Kohen. Even if, let's say, the Kohen was in shul when they called up the Yisrael. And they made a mistake. They thought he wasn't there. And they called up the Yisrael. Then the Aliya works. What if the Gabbai doesn't like the Kohen and he intentionally called up Yisrael? Since he's over on an asay and he's poigim the Kohen, the bracha of the Yisrael is not a bracha, and it's boitseya beirech, and it does not count. So, gam ken oil minyan shiva. Ve'achar ha'Yisrael ayala kohen. Once you call up a Yisrael, we should not call up a Kohen. Di'eshlachosh lepagmai, because then people are going to think the Kohen's not a Kohen. She'yamr she'en a Kohen midakara achar Yisrael. They're going to say he's not a Kohen. The fact that he took an Aliya after Yisrael. Loi hava haschala. This is not considered a haschala. Baruch Hu is not a haschala. The einza levatala. Saying Baruch Hu is not a levatala. Dahare anu akal. The kal answered Baruch Hashem Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. So saying Baruch Hu is not a haschala because it's not levatala. because the Kol answered Baruch Hashem Baruch Olam Vad. But still, so you'll say, well, now that you call up the Kohein, does the Kohein repeat Baruch Hu? Yes, the Kohein repeats Baruch Hu. The Kohein repeats Baruch Hu. Does the Yisroel, who then takes another Aliya, repeat Baruch Hu when he gets an Aliya? Yes. However, if someone gets an Aliya and he becomes a mute and someone takes his place, the Shulchan Aruch says later on that the next Oila makes a bracha, Tchila v'Seif. The Mishnah Berura says he does not repeat Baruch Hu. Okay, Siv Katan Chav Beis. V'oim, by the way, could you hear me? Okay, that was the right answer. Good. You get extra points for that. Okay. V'oimed ha-Yisroel kedei shelo yisbayesh. The Yisroel stands there, meaning why don't we dismiss him, send him down? Once we call him up, we don't want to dismiss him. V'lo yala achrav Levi. We don't call Levi. The Kim the Yisroel call Lefanov. Once Yisroel read before him, im yala achrav Levi. If you're going to call up a Levi, yoimru. People are going to say the fact that you called up a Levi, the first guy must have been a Kohen. Yoimru sharishin Kohen haya. V'av sha'ai. Why would they think that? They called him up b'mkoim Kohen. V'av sha'amar b'mkoim Kohen kishakaru. Even though they said b'mkoim Kohen when they called him up. Ulkilkamei afilu hachi chayshinan. We're still worried that they're going to. That people who came to the shul late will say the fact that you called up the Levi after must be the first guy was a Kohen. Okay, Sivkatan Chavdalid. The Rishon, he could go up. What does that mean? A Levi, if you don't have a Kohen, you could call up a Levi for the first Aliya. Yuchalalos, Deloy Garam Yisrael. The Levi is not worse than a Yisrael. By the way, Legabe getting that Aliya, nowhere does the Mishnah Berura says that the Levi has an advantage to get that Aliya. But regarding Liftayach Rishon Beberchas Hamazon and Berchas Hamoitzi or Tzedakah, we do say in Siman Reish Aleph Sivkat Yud Gimel, it's better to advance, to give precedence to the Levi. But the first Aliya, there is no Maila of giving precedence to the Levi. That's only if the Yisrael is not greater than the Levi. Dilav hachi yikru rishon. If there's a Yisrael who is a bigger Talmid Chacham than a Levi, you cannot call up the Levi unless the Gadol is Moichel. And once you call up the Gadol, if there is a Gadol, you call him up. V'shuvla yikru l'Levi klal, then you don't call up the Levi at all. U'le'inyan likros l'Levi shlishi aravi b'makam shkali so makam kayin. Are you allowed to call up the Levi for, let's say, the third or fourth Aliya? If the first Aliya was Yisrael, yesh aimrim demutar. Some say it is permitted. That's that's the opinion of the Gemara. V'yesh oisrim the Elirab in the name of the Levush and Shachrim say it's aser. Based on what it's explained later on at the end of Sif Yud, in our communities, the minhag is not to call up a Kohen or a Levi only from after. So a nafkamina bezat, there is no nafkamina. We're not going to call up a Levi for Shlishi or Ravi if the first Aliya was Yisrael. When you call up a Yisrael or a Levi for the first Aliya, then you say b'mkoim Kohen. Hainu ben kishakar Yisrael b'makam Kohen oy Levi. Whether you call up a Yisrael in the place of a Kohen or a Levi. Now, let's just see Siv Zayin. Siv Zayin. Let's say there was a Kohen and a Levi in Shul. You called up a Kohen and you didn't realize there was a Levi. And then, what do you do if there's no Levi? You call up the Kohen for the second Aliya. So then, the Kohen made another Berchas HaTorah. We're not going to interrupt him. We'll let him finish. Sivkatan Chava, means he said Baruch Atah Hashem. Aval Baruch Hu Lavad Lo hava haschala. Baruch Hu alone is not a start. Va'oila halevi. The Levi will go up, levarech, to make a bracha, velikrois, and to get his Aliya. In this instance, the Kohein will not stick around to get another Aliya, because there's nothing to worry about. He already took an Aliya. We're not worried anyone is going to find a pagam in him. He already read it originally. We don't interrupt the Kohein who began making the second bracha. The Hatam kaniskar. The reason is, like we mentioned earlier, namely that once he started the Aliya, we don't want to interrupt. Otherwise, it's going to be a bracha levatala.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so that is Mishna Berura for today. We're going to be starting momentarily Sefer Chafetz Chaim.